Welcome to Abandoned Albums, the documentary podcast. Each week, our intrepid group of researchers and music archivists dig through the record crates of the world, finding those albums that may have been lost over time. If a new artist is discovered along the way, that's all the better. Using a patent-pending algorithm and spirited debate, we pick one album to discuss. Once that is settled, we will invite the artists to Thunderlove Studio to chat with your host, Keith R. Higgins. When we're lucky, they say yes. Our mission with Abandoned Albums is simple: to make sure artists' recorded work remains, or in some cases, lands on, the cultural radar. We invite you to sit back and relax. Thank you for joining us.
We're stoked to have Quint and Mark RANDLE from the Bings stopping by Thunderlove Studio this week. The Bings are a grade A power pop band you may never have heard of, and with good reason. Although their heyday was the late 1970s and early 1980s, their music never made it out into the public unless you had seen them live or were willing to dish out $100 for an old 45 of Please, Please, Please. Quint and Mark share their The Bings' unique and incredible story from a band that was quite literally steps away from success. With the release of Power Pop Planet, The Lost Tapes, on both vinyl and CD, the Bings demonstrate the power of resilience and the belief that it's never too late to become what you might have been. Here's my conversation with Quint and Mark and the story of the Bings.
Hey, Troy.
There he goes.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
Now you're in California, Quint was saying.
Yeah, I'm in. Of course, no dog.
You fetching dog.
Yeah, if I put him outside, go outside. Get out. See,
It wouldn't be the first time a dog has made an appearance.
Go outside. I'm sorry. I said, do I leave the dogs in here? They're gonna bark. Okay, Riley will be fine. Yeah, I mean, I live in near Fresno, California, Central California. Near there, a small town called Clovis. And you're in where?
I am in New Haven, Connecticut.
Okay.
So we'll just jump right into it. Quint RANDLE and Mark RANDLE of the Bings, thank you both for joining me here on Abandoned Albums. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
The original conceit behind the show was to take records that had been recorded but had never been released. But that proved to be a pretty arduous task because I don't know if it's been shelved by a record company, how am I going to find it?
That's kind of an oxymoron.
And you recorded all this music and it lay dormant.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I'll set it up a little bit and then Mark can take over. But I think we kind of fall in the category because this was 41 years ago, 42 years ago when this was all going on, as we were in the old record business model before social media. It was primarily this idea of, recording demos, recording semi-master stuff, and then shopping tapes. Like that was from the era that we were in. And people did do, their own albums at that time and do independent stuff, but it wasn't the model, that there is today where it's primarily, social media and build a following, blah, blah, blah. It was a little bit different.
Exactly.
It was wildly different.
Yeah. And just being kind of young, late teens, kind of early 20s, pretty naive. We just, at least me, I just, wanted to play in a band. And, that was all it was, and just loved music all the way from Quint and I. We used to, harmonize together on a lot of, early 50s doo-wop stuff, which was considered oldies at the time. And then we sang Beatles songs all the time, you know, the early Beatles stuff, you know, harmonized that. So music was, you know, that kind of music was really ingrained, at least in me, the love of that. And then just to, you know, learn to play an instrument, and then to just, you know, get a band together and just start playing. It was just homegrown. That's all it was. It wasn't really any big vision to try to, you know, make a record or, you know, become a big time band from the start. You know, it was just play in a band and kind of get gigs and play around and do covers and stuff. So that was kind of the inception of, you know, playing together with Quint. We were in a couple of bands together prior to the Bings.
Okay, miss, it's a shame to bust this door in, but here goes.
Haven't you bothered me enough, you big banana head?
Afraid not, miss.
So the evolution then becomes, I meet a guy named David Cranko, and he was kind of connected to, he was working for Bomp Records at the time, helping with.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he was introduced to me through someone else, and he had written a bunch of songs, and they were just demos that he had put on a cassette tape, kind of multi-layered them, ping-ponged it back and forth. But they were pretty catchy. You know, they caught my ear immediately. And so I remember going over to his apartment, I think it was in North Hollywood, and meeting him, and we had, you know, started to interact with one another, and he was interested in putting a band together, and he was working with Warner Brothers, I believe, recording some music, playing, and that's how he met our drummer, Paul Chafee. And so I was playing in just a cover band at the time, playing, you know, kind of top 40. We were kind of a rock band, but then we kind of had to go through the disco era. That's the whole.
It was every cover band's like hideous, you know, the classic rock having to go to the disco phase was the worst.
UFO tunes, you know, Doctor, and then 2 years later, I'm having to learn bass lines to, you know, some Bee Gees song, and we had no keyboard. It was just a guitar-oriented, you know, we're playing some, you know, Van Halen song, and then next thing you know, we're playing a disco song. So we got through it. That was my favorite time, but I guess I learned to play different kinds of music and sing it. You know, play that funky music, of course, all the time, which I will not play now. So nothing against it, but you know, there's a certain songs that you played so many times when you were younger that you just don't want to do anymore, at least if it's not your thing. So at the time, David Cranko was kind of in tune with what was going on. He was seeing kind of the music changing and this new kind of music coming out, which was labeled as new wave. It was kind of like.
Mark, I want to interrupt you for 1 second. Let's put a timestamp on this. What year are we talking about?
We're talking probably, well, when I met David was probably like 79, early 1980. Okay. It was, and I'm not very good. I should really probably go back and try to nail these down, these type of dates. But, you know, late 70s, I would say. And then that's when I met David, and I don't know how many months it took before, you know, we kind of got together, and he was showing me the songs, but he had the concept of the band. He saw that the music was changing, and so we decided, well, by then, you know, the hits like KROQ was like the popular, you know, becoming popular with Rodney Bingenheimer playing the new tunes, you know, Clash, I can't remember all the bands, but all these, you know, kind of newer guitar oriented, and it kind of was a harder guitar sound, you know, with the Ramones, a lot of punk stuff. But then it started to change, and it was kind of called new wave music, and a lot of it had keyboard stuff, but we didn't have that. We were still a straight ahead guitar oriented. So in our earlier shows, we decided to learn a bunch of those songs to play gigs, because that's kind of, we were just playing all over Southern California for different kinds of college dances, high school stuff, you know, church dances. That's what we were doing. We were just a working band.
And I'll jump in because it is interesting, because at that time in California, in that era, you know, dances were a good thing, and you could make good money, you know, good weekend money as a, you know, a gigging musician doing dances and stuff like that, as opposed to, you know, playing clubs. Those were a thing too, but original clubs, you don't make any money. So that was part of the strategy that they were doing.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mark.
It didn't even dawn on us that we would want to play somewhere like that until later, when we, you know, started to incorporate the original songs into the sets. So anyway, so we started out in 1980, put this band together with the drummer, Paul Chafee, and then a guitarist that I kind of knew, and Paul knew him well, and his name is Don Salmon. And his musical tastes were a lot harder edge. You know, he liked Black Sabbath and lots of harder, kind of heavier guitar sounds. And those were his musical sensibilities, where David and I really had that 60s kind of pop sensibilities. And so Paul and Don were kind of coming from this harder edge interest of music, but Dave and I had the kind of, I guess you would say, you know, more of the sunshine pop. And you know, at the time, I remember having, you know, several Ramones albums. I just liked the simplicity of the guitars, but I liked the, you know, it was kind of hard driving, fast paced. But at the same time, I loved the Beach Boys harmonies. I love Beach Boys, you know, a lot of the 60s bands I'd listened to for a long time, just loved them. And so that was kind of what I had in my head. Is I think what David was trying to do is to have a band where you had this kind of driving guitar sound with a good beat, you know, a heavy fast beat where people could dance, but also had these great, you know, harmony vocals. I think that was the idea. And so we started to play around Southern California. In fact, if anybody wants to go to the Bing's Facebook page, I think David recently posted a recording that from a show like in 1980, early, like that has like almost a set of, you know, one of our sets. We were different, is what I should say. The stuff we were playing, a lot of the kids hadn't heard it yet unless they listened to K-Rock. So there was a little bit of resistance, but it only took a few months to where everybody then started to know the songs, and I mean, people were going wild at the shows, you know. And then as we played, sprinkled in our own songs with it, we got really good reactions, you know, to it.
Were you always known as the Bings, or did you go through that arduous task of having to name yourself?
Yeah, okay, here's the story.
Be quick about it.
So we developed, if you see some of the photos of like the Troubadour show and stuff, you'll see this giant like backdrop we made. I don't know if you've seen any of those photos, and there's like a rock wall that we made out of like paper mache or something, you know, that the amps set on. We made these boxes that the gear went in, all the cords and everything, and then in front of that were these like panels that looked like kind of stone wall, and then behind it we had this big backdrop that folded kind of like a stage backdrop that says the Bings, and it kind of has a shadowy thing. And we made all that in my backyard. And originally the name was The Rings with an R. And it was like,
And it was kind of like,
yeah,
wasn't
Lord
it
of
kind
the
of like Lord of the
Right.
Rings, a little bit of a vibe?
So we make all this, we make this backdrop. We start putting our newsletter out, and David was making this homegrown newsletter. We started to build a mailing list, and those are really funny to find those. They were just mimeographed, and we mailed them out to people. And all of a sudden, I'm down at the record store. I can't remember what it was called, but I'm flipping through and I see an album by a band called The Rings. It's like brand new, somewhere out of New York, and my heart just sank. It's like, oh, come on! There's already a band called The Rings
on a major label.
So So, anyways, we got together and said, well, what can we do? Well, maybe we thought of the Bings, like a Bing cherry, and so, well, that will be easy. All we have to do is take an R and turn it into a B. So that's the name. That's how it happened. It didn't really have any meaning to us. We thought about, like a cherry or something like that, but so just the Bings. And then David came up with kind of like the logo that you see on the CD and on the album. And that's kind of what we use. So that's the story of it. And we lugged all that stuff like down to the Troubadour, and we'd set it up at some of these stages, these places we'd play. We had a big van. We loaded all this stuff set up. So it was cool. I mean, it looked great when we went on.
And later, someone told us that the term Bing was a miniature bomb.
Oh, that's right.
Really?
That's what we heard, but we don't know that. But we think of it as like Bing cherries are just like Bing.
Yeah.
When we took our 45 down to KROQ to give it to Rodney Bingham-Heimer and the staff there, we put it on we put it in a bowl of cherries.
Right.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So you'll see that a little bit, Bing cherries in our artwork here and there.
What an exciting time to be coming up in the LA music scene in the late 70s, early 80s, in that time frame.
Yeah, and I'll mention just a real quick anecdote on that is that, growing up in LA, you do kind of have an opportunity to see and hear bands, go down to the clubs. I mean, I saw like the Runaways, like the Cal State Northridge with like 3 people in the audience, and they were in their complete outfits with her Cherry Curie's, lingerie thing and the whole bit, like just like right there. And a number of, we did see a number of bands, including, the Plimsolls, even though we weren't part of that big time scene per se, we did see those bands. And then eventually the band played, the Troubadour and Madame Wong's.
She's got the look, she's got the power. She's got the look, got the look, got the look, got the power, come on. She's got the look, she'll put you under. Now don't you look, don't you look, don't you look, you'll be under her thumb. 'Cause every man's a loser when he plays a game.
And then I did join the band in 81 because I was in Montreal for a few years, and Mark told me what he was doing, and then they wanted to be sure to be able to reproduce live what they did in the studio in terms of vocals, and the 3-part harmonies were such an important part as you listen to the album. So then that's when I joined the band, and then throughout all this time our oldest brother, Guy, had a recording studio in Utah. And so how many people get to have an older brother, who has a recording studio that you get to, when I started going up there when I was, I think, 14 or 16, started coming up to Utah from California to record my original tunes and other songs. And then that became a process that we would every year or so, we would come up and bother our brother and let us record. And
Can
so
we
then
record
that
something?
yeah, can we record something? Which again, I think is unusual. And so that's when in late 80 and early 1981, when the band decided to do the single to sell at the gigs,
Right.
they came up to Rosewood recording and did the recording of that 45, which you see on the back cover of the album now. And then also that Bachelor Records has reissued as well.
She's reading a novel alone in her room. Her friends have come by, but she told them she won't be done soon. Never goes out, we tell her she can. She sits around the house till we're wondering if we'll ever find her a man. And please, please, please take her off our hands. We've been praying tonight as hard as we can. Please, 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 it's all we can stand. Why in the world won't someone send her a man? She tells us she's happy, but how could she be? Lounging on the sofa, eating chocolates and watching TV. You won't find her outside getting tan. She sits around the house till we're wondering if we'll ever find her a man. And please, please, please take her off our hands.
So all these songs that come out on the album are really just high quality demos that you're looking to shop and get a record
Pretty-
deal, if I'm understanding.
So we went up. The original four members went up to record initially, and I think we recorded like 4 songs. And the two that were that we had kind of, Dave and I had kind of worked up production on the 2 songs, Please, 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 and Oh No. Those when we went to the studio, we already kind of had the riffs worked out. Does that make sense? And so when we recorded those, and I think 2 or 3 more, we did that all within like a day and a half. It was real fast. And my brother Guy, very competent in the studio, but he wasn't recording these kind of bands up there in Utah. He was recording all kinds of things, but he wasn't, he had to just do the best he could. And amazingly enough, when you really listen to the mixing and the recording and the drum sounds, it's all amazing. And so they were of those first songs, there were the 2, Please, 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 and Oh No. That was going to be the single. So we pressed, I think, 1,000 of them on our own.
Whoa! And
that's the one that you see. It's on the Baby Moon label, and that was a label that I think Guy, my brother, and another guy had. So we put it out on that label, and that's what we would sell at the gigs, and we sold a lot of them, and so that's so over the years, those started showing up on Discogs and collectible sites as this unsigned LA band, and sometimes they would sell for quite a bit of money, which was surprising to me.
Yeah, Dave would email us and say, look on eBay, there's our single on sale, like for $80.
Yeah.
And we're like,
Wow.
And that's when we also learned that there was this niche thing of power pop, and there was this love for power pop and new wave from LA from the 80s. Not to jump ahead of ourselves, but that single was like one of the things, the thread through this all, that because that single was being collected, we were like, I actually got a phone call from someone in 2018 that was like, hey, I'm looking for, and they named the name of the song, and it wasn't even either of those 2 songs. It was one of the ones that was never released. And what it was is people were collecting our promo kits,
like the tape
Oh my
that
God.
wrapped around. Yeah.
Yeah, they were searching for these songs that didn't actually exist. And so to jump back in the story.
Yeah, I came back with it. I played it for some people, and this booking agent that was getting us gigs, and everybody really liked it, you know. And then the drummer's father, Paul's father, had some connections with some attorneys and set up, you know, he like set up a corporation, and we actually, you know, I remember going to a couple meetings, and at the time also then we were somehow introduced to the Podler brothers, Richie Podler, you know, who
I don't know them.
well,
I don't know
he
them.
produced Three Dog Night, you know.
And
his brother was kind of a booking agent, and so they kind of had some interest in us. And Richie Podler was interested in possibly, you know, recording and producing us.
And didn't he own like American Recorders,
right,
some
American,
big studio, like
I think is where it was.
Yeah, a huge studio that is kind of a storied history of one of the. Anyway, so there was a little bit of like, hey, we have connections.
Right.
Just,
yeah.
you know.
Exactly.
Well, you had mentioned moments ago that Dave had a connection at Bomp Records. Was that of any use?
Well, I don't know. I don't know the dates, but I don't know how long he worked there. But yeah, there was. But it's not like.
Well, this is kind of the enigma of the band. Is that, you know, we feel like we had the material. You know, maybe we weren't the hippest looking people in the world, right? You don't know, you're right. And so,
yeah,
you know, this is where there were some connections, but everybody's got connections. There were, you know, cold, you know, sending tapes and packages to all the record labels, all the stuff that people do.
We did,
you know, over the 3 years that we recorded those materials, or 81, 82, I guess it was 2 years. And the several different, a couple different parts or versions of the band as people, you know, went on with their lives, or, you know, kind of got tired or whatever. You know, we put an ad in Recycler and got Don or Paul decided to leave. And then we got another drummer who, you know, eventually went on, and he's been playing with Pat Benatar for the last 15 years and tours the world. So, so there was we were kind of around the music business and doing those things, but it just never, you know, we never kind of took it to the next level.
But there was enough momentum to keep you going
up to a point. Yeah.
I think what it was, at least for me, I can only speak for myself, is I think it didn't appeal to me. You know, we play a few Hollywood clubs, and I think what we needed to do was just keep getting booked at those places and try and play, and we didn't do it. We were just, I was more interested in just playing, you know, shows and making money. I didn't really see the vision of getting signed, and, you know,
we weren't club hounds.
Yeah.
Or club rats.
We were just like, you know, Valley kids having fun. I think that's what it was.
I have to wonder, this is right around the time the Knack just exploded.
Exactly.
And your sound is in that realm.
I know.
No, that's,
you know,
wasn't the Knack right before, Mark?
It was like 79.
They were right before. So yeah, exactly.
So we were part of, what do they call it? Second wave or skinny tie, power pop.
I remember going down and seeing them. I remember go down there and seeing them, you know, and it was wild. It was great. I don't know. There wasn't the burning in my heart to do that, I think.
Okay.
And I think, Mark, you know, we had all our equipment stolen.
Well, that was the end of the band. That's what happened.
Kind of. Well, that was, but then, that was the end. But we did several more sets of recording.
We went up the first time, and then the second time we went up to Utah, we had a different drummer, and then Quint was playing and singing, and that was the second set. But these were demos. It really is all it was. They weren't finished, you know, 100%, you know, produced songs. So I think the really takeaway from our album is, you have an album holding in your hands, if you listen to the Bings Power Pop Planet, it's an album that's untouched by, there you go, and you got one. It's untouched by a record company producer.
The other thing that's interesting about it is, again, it's not like the Shivers or whatever. Some of this stuff has been like reissues of albums that existed. This album never existed. And that's why what was weird about when I sat down to go, okay, how do we market this thing? How do we what's the story? What's the narrative? Because it's kind of an album, it's kind of a reissue, but it's kind of not. It's literally a debut album that was made 40 years ago.
We're like Jack Palance in the movie Shane, throwing the pistol at the sheep herder's feet. Pick it up. I don't want to pick it up, mister. You'll shoot me. Pick up the gun. You all saw him. He had a gun.
The songs are presented in chronological order and when they were recorded, basically. And then we have this in 2010. I went into the studio with Guy, and we, took a date, one of Dave's killer, amazing songs, and it was really a surprise for Mark and Dave that I went in and recorded "Snowbound" in Our Town, and so was in 2010. But the rest of it is like a new album that no one's heard except for the first two songs. So that's different. So in that sense, it really is an abandoned album.
Absolutely. 100% correct. Now, I want to ask this question for both myself and folks out there who might not understand the subtle difference. You say they were recorded as demos.
Well,
Yeah.
So for the general public, demos were called demonstration tapes, okay? And they can be everything from a guitar vocal to a more produced. Like there are some pop songs where, like a Bruce Springsteen, when he does his demos, they almost sound exactly like or very close to the finished song. So these were self-produced demos. They were releasable or master quality in the sense that we did put two of them out on a 45. The demo at that point really meant it was fast. There were mistakes, that we let pass. And they're mainly to show to record labels. But with the technology and the level of, even though they were demos, they were high quality demos, that we were able to take them and make an album that was relatively master quality, especially in today's market where everybody does home recordings.
So nothing on this album you hear was overdubbed in the way of, modern. It's all the original from 1981 to. There's nothing that's added.
Yeah, we decided to make it a restoration. We did use a few, of the technologies that we had today, but generally we tried to stay true that it was a restoration, not a new recording.
I want to talk about finding a box of tapes. How does one just stumble upon that?
The demise of the band was I had set up, and I was living in the San Fernando Valley. I had one kid and another one on the way. I had a construction business, but I had converted my garage into a rehearsal studio and a place Dave and I could work on songs and we could practice. Came home one night. My wife and I went somewhere. Actually, we went to church, came back, and somebody had broken into our garage and stole everything. Everything. And that was it. At that point, I just said, me, it was over. I already, I had a business, and that was the demise of the band. So that's how it ended. And so the original question, Quint, was what?
Jeez. The original question now jumped 40. So now
40
jump
years.
40 years to finding the tapes.
So we moved northward. We moved up here, and in the time I've lived here in Clovis, we've moved 3 times. And I have these 2 metal filing cabinets that I used to, keep all my business stuff in and whatever. And I always saved a lot of stuff. So it's way upstairs. We're in a 3-story old house. And in 2020, I'm just up in there and I'm cleaning out some junk out of one of these cabinets. And way in the back there, I have a bunch of magazines kind of on top, and I see these 2 big boxes, and I pull them out, and they're the tapes well, just like Quint said, they're not the stereo 1/4 inch. They're the 16-track tapes.
And Mark didn't even know kind of what they were, because he texted a photo of them to me and Guy and goes, "What are these?"
And it turns out, that started he said, well, maybe we could do something. So he searched around for a studio that could do the conversion, which he found one in Long Beach, California. And so I sent him to that guy, and he had them like a month or so. And I guess they all survived, and eventually then sent them to Guy digitally.
They bake them, all that stuff you hear about Hollywood, baking the tapes. And
I've heard the phrase. What do we talk about baking the tapes?
They take the tapes and they literally put them in an oven at a certain degrees for a certain period of time, and that somehow loosens up the magnetic from one side of the tape up against the other side of the tape while they're wound up, and it loosens it so it doesn't stick, so the tape actually unwinds. Something like that. I might be off. And over the years, Dave had been like, who's got the masters? Mark, do you have the masters? I don't have the masters. We don't know what happened to our stereo masters. We're like, whatever, we would have done something. But
I think what it was, when I asked Guy about it, I don't know, but I think he probably made us pay for them, when we did the recording. And then when we're all done, it's like he didn't want to store. He probably gave them to me to take home. But I don't know how they survived 3 moves in that same, and that's where we got a lot of the stuff from the album, old ticket stubs and newsletter. They're all in this filing cabinet, which has been for years. I don't throw a lot away.
Thankfully.
For once it paid off. So then Mark, starts talking to Guy, and we start talking to him. The original idea was just to hey, why don't we just make it for our grandkids and just make it just so we could listen to them in the car. So Dave and I and Mark and the rest of the band could doesn't this sound great to hear the original, how good they sounded? Because all we had were stupid cassettes, that were old and ran too fast and all that kind of stuff. So Guy, starts working on them, and I would go over and check in and work on them here and then. And then they just developed into, might as well make a CD. Might as well take the logo, slap it on the CD, so we have something. Might as well send it off. So that's kind of it. It went from let's just make something to listen to in our cars to, and Mark had heard a few of these power pop podcasts, some of these niche radio shows, and was saying, there's this market. And then I had that phone call people, and we'd see it on Discogs, and we were like, let's put this out. So a year ago is when the CD came out.
Okay. And what's the response been?
Well, the response has been really, really cool because we've gotten airplay or show airplay literally, all over the world. I think about 16 different shows, France, Spain, South America, Japan. I shipped off, sold a big stack we had some old 45s hanging around, so I sold a few. So we're big in Japan. Another hallmark of any band. So and again, the emotional payoff, which again, it's a passion project like everything else, and it's been really fun. And we were able to last year in August, we got invited to play the International Pop Overthrow Festival in LA, which has, they do like 5 different cities, and we had most of the original band together. Dave came down from Santa Barbara where he lives, and he sang on a tune. And so we had this literal 40-year live reunion. And so all this airplay, a few articles, on websites and so forth, and a few other podcast interviews. And then what happened is then I actually got contacted by a little label.
Yeah.
And this label says, hey, do you want to, do this distribution deal? And I'm like, well, if they're interested, maybe someone else will be interested. And I had put a few TikToks and also got made some friends. One of them who really helped out, his name was Alan Lulu. He's in Los Angeles, and he has done a lot of power pop stuff, and he has a vinyl thing on TikTok that he does. Anyways, he was very helpful in kind of opening us up to the market, because we had kind of gone on with our lives musically. I've been in a Christian country band that's done 8 albums. Mark's played in bands. The other few, our drummer Chris, went on and played with Pat Benatar. Geez, anyways, we'd all kind of gone on with our lives, and so we weren't even super, because you didn't call it power pop back then.
Yeah.
We kind of realized what it was. Anyway, so we started marketing it to all these shows, and then Bachelor Records heard it, and they thought it was fake. They said this can't.
Yeah, that's the funniest thing. Yeah.
What? Wait.
Well, they thought that it was a marketing gimmick. Like this is a real new band, and they were going to say they're old. That's how good the recordings sound.
Okay.
The recordings don't sound like 1981 because it's mixed today, but it feels like, and in other ways, sounds like 1981. And so that's anyway, so Bachelor Records was kind enough to bring us on board. And, again, they've had a number of killer albums that they've done, including like The Shivers and some others. And they're really distribute several major kind of power pop bands in Europe as well. So they were excited to bring us on. And then they like didn't even realize the single. And once they realized the single, they said, let's release that first. And so the album came out about a month or 5 weeks ago. Okay. And, like a lot of this stuff nowadays, the CD or the streaming comes out, and then the vinyl follows. And so that's kind of, we're in that vinyl phase of kind of reviewing what's gone on. But again, for us, it's like, I've set aside, the copies for my grandkids, and so that's been fun to see the evolution of vinyl now that we've kind of come full circle.
So the big question is, are we going to try to, do a new song, do a new single? That's kind of.
That's one of the questions. Yes. What's the answer?
Well, we've been kicking around. We're looking at some songs. We're talking with Dave some more and kicking around some material, looking at some options. They are We're going to play the International Pop Festival again this year. I believe that's the official decision in August. And so, yeah, we're just kind of taking it one day at a time and enjoying building. And again, one of my driving factors has just been building the legacy for Dave and for Mark, that, you know, we had this cool stuff that maybe didn't get the attention it deserves. And maybe, you know, we weren't going to be big time, but it definitely deserved more attention that we have. And that's been the biggest payoff of all, is that established this legacy, that there was this band and that they sounded pretty good and they had some killer songs.
Through rain I travel so far, headlights shine from my car, clouds so thick they turn day into night. A billboard along the highway said, step inside, it's okay. You can bask in the rays on a tropic isle. The very idea made me smile, to think that I could get away from whipping winds and driving rain, to think that I could up and fly away. There's a billboard by the highway calling you to sunnier places. Step inside sometime, sail away now. Within the flash of lightning.
I use artificial intelligence. I put in, it's like, all right, give me a question to ask the Bings in the voice of Lester Bangs.
Okay.
So, and again, he's known to be like, you know, hip and streetwise. And so this is in the voice of Lester Bangs. This is not Keith Higgins. This is Lester asking this question. I don't know how he spoke, but so here's the question. You got to go back in time. You're at the peak of your live powers. Spill the beans on your most electrifying, mind-blowing gig, the one where the stars aligned, the crowd went wild, and you transcended the earthly plane. What was it that made that night pure rock and roll nirvana?
Well, I'll do mine, and then maybe Mark could do another. But for me, it was obviously the Troubadour, which was, you know, the world famous Troubadour, where you have all the famous people that have made it. You know, and this was before Pay to Play, which came on in the 80s. So this was like a real gig. They had to like us. And so we did that gig, and it was a kind of a packed house. And I wish that song, we have photos from it. And I actually recovered and found those photos. I thought they were lost. And those are the photos you see on the inside and the back. And we did, you know, a full set of originals, and the crowd went nuts. We don't have that on recording. Wow. Supposedly, you know, a Capitol, or one, we played the Troubadour twice later on after I'd left that version of the band. But for me, that was, and especially now that it's like the Troubadour, right? It's part of Hollywood or LA history. So being able to play the Troubadour was really fun and was really awesome with our harmonies. Playing my Rickenbacker, that was awesome. So that's my answer. Mark, maybe I'm just going to push you to talk about Madame Wong's. Maybe
the only memory I have of Madame Wong's is you had to climb stairs to get up to the stage. There's no memory of that. Dave would. No, there was not. There's nothing positive there. As far as there was a couple of schools we played. I remember there was a junior high school we played where the energy was so high, and you had these young kids that were just literally going wild. You know, they must have thought we were the Beatles or something, you know. And I remember that show, and then the Troubadour show, obviously, because now we're just playing all Bing songs. We're not a cover band. This is the real deal. We got a whole set of our own songs with maybe like one cover. And that was the same show. Yeah, it was all put together for that one night, or the couple times we played there, and that would be it. And then it was over.
And that's why we included the live tracks on the vinyl. There's not That's not on the CD, the original version. Those are additional bonus tracks. And if you listen to those, you really can hear like the power and then the crowd going wild.
Man.
And that's why we included those.
That's something else. Now, I haven't heard you mention the whiskey. The whiskey was around.
Yeah, the whiskey was around. And the whiskey would have been the next like thing we hadn't given up, right? The whiskey would have been, and the Starwood was the other. Now, what was Madame Gazzari? Wasn't what was Gazzari's?
But that
Gazzari's,
was with the Fable band, but we weren't playing. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a different band. But like you hear like Gazzari's, because Van Halen was in at Gazzari's. You hear stories about that. So Mark had played Gazzari's. So yeah, like I said, we were kind of like in this like next level up, but not like
we needed somebody to.
You were right there.
Yeah, we didn't know what we were doing. Basically, we needed, I guess, a manager or something to, that had the connections to help us, get booked, I guess. We didn't know how to do it.
As you learn later in life, that really is about repetition and just doing it and doing it and and that's what you learn. That's what I've learned later in life. You just never give up. But again, maybe, we didn't want it that bad, right? We went on to other things.
But you guys always kept music in your vortex, right?
Oh yeah. No, I have went on and have become very, Dave was a great teacher and an inspiration to me as a songwriter. And I've gone on to, I've got a number of songs published in Nashville. Like I said, I've been in this band that's done 8 albums. It's totally was the setup for the rest of my, even though it was a different genre,
right.
I learned so much from that stage, and then have been, lucky enough to be signed to another label for a while, another record, an actual a Christian niche label. Yeah. And so to be able to do that, it's been, to have that set up so early was a great blessing. And Mark,
how about you? You always keep around you stuck with music in some capacity?
Next thing you know, I had 4 kids, construction business, raised a family. And then later in life, then I got interested, and I've been playing the last probably 20 years in 2 or 3 different bands, doing stuff. And, I've written a few original tunes and, did some demos and stuff. And so, totally playing, it's totally a part of my life.
Well, I got to say, the guy who stole your equipment really sounds like he took the wind. The person or persons who stole your equipment really took the wind out of your sails. And
never found out who it was. Only one guitar showed up in a pawn shop that the police tracked like several years later. That's it. Nothing ever showed up anywhere. It's all just disappeared. It's just the weirdest thing.
And the other thing I'll say is that also that Dave was also keeping the light of this going, because we probably wouldn't have been inspired to do this if he hadn't been keeping track and watching things and staying engaged a little more than we were, and so that was another thing that it wouldn't have happened if Dave hadn't have gone, where are the masters?
Right.
So we can say that there might be new music, and you're going to do a live date in Los Angeles in August. Is that right?
Yes. August 10th, we're going to play the IPO International. That's David Bash's event.
Awesome.
He's invited.
Let me tell you, it's hard to relearn songs from when you were 21, and the speed of those things, the chunking, the 8th note, Ramones, that's a different. That takes a lot more testosterone, than you have when you're older. But it was fun, and it's it'll continue to be fun.
69 years old now.
Wow, that's great. Well, the Stones are still doing it, and they got 100 years on you guys.
Just look at Mick Jagger. Wow.
Well, Quint and Mark, we are at time. I want to thank you both for taking the time to chat with me this evening.
And I want to thank you again for having us on, but also you just doing this in general, because this is and important to music as an art form. Forget the business part of it, but music as part of our culture and as an art form, and letting people talk about their passion and their history and looking at the history of this, because it's important. So thank you for this work.
You're welcome, and thank you for saying that. With that, I will let you guys go. Mark, Quint, thank you.
Thank you. You can find us, follow us on social media at Bing's Band.
And they get Bandcamp to purchase.
And you can find us on Bandcamp and to purchase the vinyl, and also at Bachelor Records if you're over.
And we'll have links in the show notes for everyone to make it super easy for folks. Again, thanks, guys. This is great.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Take care, Mark, Quint. Bye-bye.
Many thanks to Quint and Mark Randle for taking the time to share the story of the Bings. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all of the Bings' social media and musical outlets.
This episode of Abandoned Albums was written and produced by Keith R. Higgins. The show was recorded at Thunderlove Studio, where it was engineered by
Daphne Morris,
with help from
Penetration.
Abandoned Albums was edited by
Vic Titball,
with help from
Clem Fandango.
At the beginning of this podcast, you were treated to a diverse selection of music, including the soulful sounds of Forever by Little Steven and the Disciples of Soul, the indie vibes of Velvet Roof by Buffalo Tom, and the raw energy of Nevermind by The Replacements. Our theme song is Kiss the Earth by The Renegades. You can stream all of these artists wherever you stream your favorite music.
You heard the following songs during this podcast: Oh No, She's Got the Power, Please, 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 Hold On, and lastly, Billboard by the Highway. All of these songs can be found on the Bings album Power Pop Planet, The Lost Tapes. You can stream the Bings wherever you stream your favorite music, and please remember to support independent music.
Original music by Mike Pellegrino.
If you like what you've heard, please remember to subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps other people find the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Grazie.
Bailey Leaf,
Rob Janicki, Mike Pellegrino, Farina Bella,
Eric Beatner, S.W. Loudon, Ronnie Barnett,
Michael Janicki, Peyton Janicki.
This show's executive producer is Lulu McGillicuddy and is in the loving memory of
Rufus Thunderlove.
Abandoned Albums receives funding from Damon Pharmaceuticals, the makers of Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck is the only chewable tablet made to combat stomach unease associated with mediocrity. Taken daily, Ben Affleck can help combat explosive gastrointestinal shame. You can find a multitude of flavors in the incontinence section of your local pharmacy. Ben Affleck, save yourself the embarrassment.
The side effects include dry mouth, headache, anal leakage, muscle soreness, bad decisions, gender confusion, constipation, evil spirit possession, and banality. Use only as directed.
And now, until we meet again next time, I remain as always obediently yours.
Abandoned Albums is a production of Paw Print Media.